acknowledge the traditional custodians, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and particularly so as such a large percentage of Aboriginal people are within the corrective services system without getting any special education, but we'll hear about that. Can I firstly thank and welcome him, our host for tonight, the Honourable David Shoebridge, MLC, and since he's just walked in, Mr. Guy Zangari, Shadow Minister for Corrections, representing the Legislative Assembly as well. Next to him is Dr. Anne-Marie Martin, Assistant Commissioner, Offender Management and Programs. And then next is Maxine Sharkey, Deputy Secretary, New South Wales Teachers Federation. Dr. Jedediah Evans of the Australian Catholic University. And last, Stephen Seymour, University of Southern Queensland, on the end. The government has, as is their custom, chosen not to have a representative, although they were invited, so that Dr. Martin will be speaking for the Corrective Services, which carries out government policy, but of course is not here representing the government, but that's the government's decision. There are representatives here tonight, which I welcome, Terry Q, CEO, and Carla Phillip, a Director of BSIL Learning, the organisation that the government has contracted with to carry out certain training activities. Thank them for coming also. This has been a long-running issue for the corrective, for the ICJ, International Commission of Jurists, and the Community Justice Coalition. It's been a concern of ours, and indeed was a concern of mine when I was a Judge of Justice of the Supreme Court, when I had matters come before me concerning computers and didn't get the level of cooperation from corrective services that I would have liked, but that was under a previous administration, so I just say I've got a long track record in the matter. So we'll have the speakers address you, and I will then hand it over for general questions, and we've got a suggested motion that you may like to deal with, but we'll deal with that later.
In New South Wales, Corrective Services has a hybrid model of education, to really roughly around 13,500 people in the custodial system. Our model includes education service coordinators, teachers and assessment and planning officers that are funded by the department, as well as we have funded partnerships with BSI Learning and TAFE New South Wales. The target within this model of education is to double the number of inmates completing literacy and numeracy. There is also a target to increase our vocational training up to 20%, by 20%, and I'm really pleased to see that we are on track or achieving these particular targets with the new model that's only been in place and rolling out over the past 12 months. Our funded service agreements with BSI Learning and TAFE enables opportunities across a few different areas. With BSI Learning, they provide training in cleaning operations, hospitality, kitchen operations and food safety. And as you can imagine, with 13,500 people in our correctional system, we use this in our food services industries, in prisons, to support the overall system. So they become vocational training environments and help the system. The work through BSI Learnings is also supported by the work through TAFE New South Wales, and they particularly help us with a variety of safe work high risk licences, construction, engineering, warehousing and logistics. BSI Learning helps us also in the literacy and numeracy space, in addition to our 4 intensive learning centres where we have our 20 teachers across those 4 centres. These centres are staffed by our teachers. They have almost full-time access to the inmates in these centres, so custodial staff will move students over to these environments during the day and then they'll be escorted back. So in addition to our Certificate 1 in Access to Vocational Pathways and Skills for Vocational Pathways and Certificate 4 in Skills for Work and Vocational Pathways, we're also looking at, we've started conversations, including through BSI Learning, with the Literacy for Life Foundation, which have done a lot of work in the Aboriginal community in Australia, as well as for people with cognitive deficits. And it provides a different way of learning, less formal, and it's been demonstrated to give positive results. And for those that are interested, I'm happy to provide an internet link to that later. The length of the courses is dependent upon access to the inmates, I mentioned this before, as well as schedules within hours out of cell. And this varies according to the security classification of inmates across our centre, as well as the role and functions of the different centres that we have. In terms of foundational skills, these are scheduled in terms of 10-week blocks, 4 times a year, because we recognise that we need to work with this particular group quite intensively. It's more of a closed group format rather than a rolling group format that we more often have in the vocational training space. Currently we have more than 200 inmates engaged in our traineeship program, including in construction, engineering, hospitality, warehousing and textiles.
I'll start with education, because we know that education is the building blocks for an individual's future. I really link in education right in that core point to seeing individuals who need a second chance in life and believing in that, but also giving them the opportunity to thrive in an environment which is pretty harsh, so that we can give them the opportunity post-release to succeed. Now, there are some significant issues with that, in saying that when you remove teachers from a system, quality teachers, I think you really undermine educational opportunities. Because as someone who has been in that part before as a teacher, but then as a provider in vocational education and training, it's a very different nature. Because when you are in vocational education, you have your competencies in front of you as a training provider, and it's either you're competent or not. So you tick and flick as you go along. But if you then rewind that back to being a teacher, a professional teacher, a quality teacher, invests in the individual under his or her care and tailors education and those opportunities to that person, no matter who they are. It is disappointing that those quality teachers have been taken out of the system. And I have to put it out to where it is, because it is through quality education in literacy and numeracy, and I said before, the building blocks to a successful life and future, that it is then very hard to get an individual to get into construction, to get into hospitality management, to get into engineering, to get into business management, retail, etc., unless the individual knows how to basically read and write. The teachers are able to tailor specific type of teaching and learning for that individual based on who they are, and working that relationship with them to be positive. Because remember, the people that are in corrections, the inmates themselves, many of them have not had positive experiences. Many of them probably don't have literacy and numeracy skills up to the standard of a Year 6 student by what we benchmark in NAPLAN. And many of them have not completed Year 10 in high school. So I think what is important, and the message that I want to put out there as someone who has had that background in education but is now in this position as an opposition spokesperson for corrections, that I realise that we must get it right. Because if we don't get it right in that rehabilitation stage, right? When people are incarcerated, that we are setting them up for failure. And not only that, what follow through is available for these individuals once they actually do get out, and if they do have that opportunity to either get a trade or a ticket for driving a forklift.
If the question genuinely was, how do we increase prisoners' literacy and numeracy rates, it is incredulous to think that anyone in their right mind, in the first instance, would think sacking the highly qualified, experienced teachers would be the answer. The New South Wales Teachers Federation contends the decision was ideological, pure and simple. This government is driven to outsource public employment wherever possible and has no commitment to education. In this case, it would appear the implications were not even considered. Assessment, especially the way it can be done, and I believe is done at the moment, is simply funneling people through a computer-generated testing regime that doesn't provide and cannot provide the rich analysis a teacher can. A training package is not curriculum. Training packages were introduced as a result of competency-based training, and they focus on assessment. A certificate for training and assessment qualification does not cover pedagogy or andragogy, and it does not give the learner the capacity to create curriculum or to have teaching skills to turn assessment into an engaging learning strategy. We have replaced highly qualified, experienced teachers with people who hold a certificate for in workplace trainer and assessor. In order to learn, a student must be prepared to take a risk. They have to be prepared to fail. They have to be prepared to highlight their weaknesses as well as their strengths. A teacher creates a safe environment through gaining trust over time. A teacher must sometimes push a student out of their comfort zone in order for them to achieve their potential. It's almost impossible for students to gain that level of trust in their education where their teachers are constantly changing. And that's what we're seeing happening now with the new model of educational delivery in our prison system. Corrective services teachers were sacked in 2016, but the tender process to replace them wasn't finalised until May 2017. And it wasn't until August that BSI could begin to deliver trainers to a handful of jails. For the entire of 2017, some jails missed out on an opportunity for basic literacy education altogether. What was the rush?
But for us in this project, and this is something I want to emphasise tonight, is partnerships being key. So that's partnerships with the custodial staff at the various centres, understanding what a structured day means at a correctional centre. How is it that we can continue the delivery of quality education within that structured environment? Understand the concerns that custodial staff have about the arrival of digital technologies. It used to be that USQ from our stores would send out a post pack like that. They would have the tertiary preparation course like that. Whereas now it comes in a little device, yay big, sitting on the end of the desk there. But we had to sit down with the custodial staff, talk through the challenges and what is it that we can do to allay those fears. So the Making the Connection project has developed and introduced offline digital courses and technologies into prisons. So what we did is we took existing courses that we knew are popular based on our historic enrolment patterns, and we modified them and repurposed those courses so that they would work in an offline environment. Got a significant grant from the federal government, some $4 million, and what we've ended up with is technology that's designed to work without the internet. And the other thing that we've also developed is an education officer portal, a kiosk. The technical guys came up with the name kiosk. But on that, an officer can go onto that and download the courses. They've got a unique identifier that allows them to go into the back of house stuff at the university, all legit, and they've called it a Persons of Interest ID, shouldn't perhaps have called them that, but that's what the tech guys called it, and that's how they access the courses 2 weeks prior to the start of semester. Download that, put that on the device, give that device to the prisoner starts his or her course 2 weeks before the start of the semester. And everything is self-contained, the full 16 weeks is on there. All the assignments, all the podcasts, all the videos, everything's there, including who the academic is or are that are delivering the courses to the student. So the student feels like a student. The study desk, the learning management system that they see on there, for all intents and purposes, is exactly the same as what a USQ student would see if they were outside, online. What have we done over the last 4 years? We've had 1,300 incarcerated students enrolled in these courses, out of a total of 3,500 students enrolled across Australia at the university, 2,700 course enrolments. Our retention rate in these courses is higher than mainstream students on the outside. Most of our students that are studying with us actually do better in terms of topping the class, getting the Golden Key Award than mainstream students. What we've found is that it's been a challenge for us to track students once they exit prison because we can't track them because of privacy issues, but more and more of them are turning up at the university unannounced and continuing their studies, which is extremely encouraging for us and my colleagues.
I've taken 3 people's lives in my time. You know, I'm not proud of that. You know, I hate it. You know, now I literally hate it. You know, and I'll never be that person again. You know, because of education.
That's why we do education. That's why you want a greatly enhanced prisoner education experience, and all kudos to the Coalition for that.
In any state, but I'm most familiar with the kind of data we have in New South Wales. We know what the prison population consists of. It consists of overwhelmingly people who have had quite repeated traumas in their life, dealing with mental health issues, dealing with systemic poverty, often, you know, innumerate and illiterate, but with extremely complex needs. And the thought that you will engage that cross-section of the population, of the prison population, with just literacy and numeracy skills, and they'll get excited and participate and want to keep going to education, is plain nonsense. Plain nonsense. And when you talk to prison educators who have been in the system for years, they tell you how important it can be to give those other options for education. The art classes that get laughed at by the minister. But sometimes that's the only way you can engage and start the process of education and sitting down and self-centeredness that can be necessary for education. When you talk to prison educators who have been in the system for years, they tell you how important it can be to give those other options for education. The art classes that get laughed at by the minister. But sometimes that's the only way you can engage and start the process of education and sitting down and self-centeredness that can be necessary for education. The music education. People held in prison on remand, they've been refused bail, do not have access to the great majority of educational rehabilitation programs. And we know that the number of people on remand in New South Wales prisons just keeps incessantly increasing. Changes to the bail laws over the last 6 years, reforms that were made, first of all, in 2013, but then driven further backwards by changes in 2015. And those changes were signed on. Detrimental, backward changes to our bail laws that have put vastly more people in jail. We have the lowest levels of violent crime in the post-war period. It's quite remarkable, really. Yet we've seen our prison population expand, and we could keep expanding the prison population, or we could try and fix the problem at its core. That is, fix the bail. Stop putting so many people in jail who will never be able to get to for education programs. That's a fundamental need. Do that, and a lot of resources are freed up to do everything else we want to do on education. Like literally, we could go into Parliament tomorrow, fix the bail laws, and we could free up a good $200, $300, $400, $500 million to work on education. Put the computers in jails, give the access to Southern Cross University or whoever wants to be there. We could do it tomorrow if we had the political courage to fix the bail laws.
So the underlying assumption beneath a forum such as the one that we're here for is that education in corrective services is essential, right? I think that that's kind of something that we need to state clearly. It is something that serves both the men and women who are incarcerated as well as the communities from which they come and to which the vast majority will return. As a teacher, I've always seen education, and here I think I echo other sentiments, as a tool for dignity, as a way of equipping people to recognise their own potential and offering pathways beyond the apparent inevitabilities of social circumstance. So this is from the RAND study, and this is the most comprehensive study that we have on the efficacy of prison education, a meta-analysis carried out over about 35 years. RAND, among other things, suggested that the rate of recidivism nearly halves when incarcerated adults undertake education. I should clarify that. That's the odds of recidivism compared with somebody who hasn't undertaken those programs. And these are programs that are not one thing. They range from basic skills through vocational study through to tertiary level study. And beyond range and variety, the RAND report also suggested that outside collaboration is essential for reducing reoffending. In instances where prisoners undertake study that is coordinated by external services, and that is most commonly a university, the odds of recidivating are significantly reduced, up to 56% less likely than those who do not enjoy this collaboration. Correctional education works best when, 1, there is a range of opportunities from basic skills to vocational training to tertiary education, by which we mean there is investment in those things also. And second, the instruction involves involvement from educators who are external to that system, who can meaningfully connect inmates with communities that are beyond their prison walls. Now, one collaborative tertiary program that has been run in the UK since 2015 is called Learning Together. And this offers, I think, a good reason for focusing on range and variety. So Learning Together was started by Cambridge University, and it involves graduate criminology students who are undertaking a criminology unit with learning alongside incarcerated students on site at the prison. These sessions are led by Cambridge academics. The students read the same material. They contribute together in a model of collaboration and co-learning. By having opportunities for prisoners to aspire to, you give them reasons for accessing the basic skills that operate as a bridge into more meaningful learning opportunities. And it's my desire that we too will have this kind of hopeful vision for corrections in New South Wales and beyond. Education that is not simply an administrative obligation, but instead a step towards something like genuine reform and freedom. Thanks.
Thank you, Jed. If the speakers wouldn't mind coming here, we have a short time for questions. Sorry,
my name's Rob Long. I'm a vocational education teacher. I'm actually currently working for the New South Wales Teachers Federation. And my question is to Dr. Martin. When they first brought in the Certificate 4, it was as a minimum qualification for vocational education teachers to have. In other areas where vocational education is delivered in New South Wales schools, in TAFE colleges, that is seen as the minimum, and teachers are encouraged to get a higher qualification than that. In New South Wales jails, teachers used to have a higher qualification than Certificate 4. Why have we gone to the minimum standard for the majority of jails in New South Wales? I don't know if BSI, if you can tell me if they are encouraging people to get a higher qualification for their employees. Why have we gone to the minimum standard where we used to have people that were higher qualified?
When we went out to the market for our funded partnership arrangement, any RTO could apply for funding with corrective services, and they were required to meet the ASQA standards. So those RTOs, BSI Learning and TAFE, need to ensure that their staff meet the standards to provide education in jails. Now, I won't make any further comment around that, but that is what went out, and that's what they've responded to.
Well, it's my very pleasant duty to thank each one of the speakers. I found myself this the most informative, interesting forum. I'd like to thank Dr. Anne-Marie Martin for outlining the current situation and for giving us a little hint about the future of in-cell technology. I'm grateful for that. like to thank the Honourable Guy Zangari for emphasising to us a subject he knows very well, the importance of professional teachers in education. And I thank Maxine Sharkey of the New South Wales Teachers Federation for expanding that idea of the importance of teachers, professional teachers, and for talking about the importance of the relationship between teacher and pupil. She also raised, though only briefly, the lack of educational opportunities for women in prison, which is a subject that needs quite a bit more thought. I thank Stephen Seymour too for showing us the huge potential for technology in education, particularly in higher education in prisons. That's fantastic opportunities that are being opened up there, despite the cloud problems that he mentioned. I thank the Honourable David Shoebridge for his heartfelt plea to reduce the number of people in prison, and particularly to reduce the number on remand, and also to restore professional teachers. And Dr. Jedediah Evans, thanks to you for your presentation, emphasising the importance of offering in prisons a wide range of educational opportunities and the use of outside educators in prisons, and the value of technology too. We've had quite a bit of interest in that tonight. And thanks for telling us about the Inside Out program. So I thank each and every one of the presenters tonight, and I ask everyone present to offer a very big thanks to everyone. Further business, John? Any further business? Well, I declare the forum closed. Thank you.